My childhood friend Bruno fell in love with the poor student in our class. He skipped classes and got into fights for her. Later, the poor student stole my belongings. Bruno stood by her side and accused me of making false claims. I wasn't in the habit of indulging others, so I directly pulled out my phone. Let's call the police. Chapter 1. After finishing PE and returning to the classroom, I couldn't find my necklace. Before class, I had taken it off and placed it inside my desk compartment. Now, even after taking out everything inside and rummaging through them, the necklace was nowhere to be seen. I checked the floor nearby and searched my bag, but it was all in vain. Just as I lifted my head, I saw my necklace hanging around the neck of Juliet, the poor student in our class. The original chain of this necklace was an O-link chain, but later I had replaced it with a snake bone chain. A snake bone chain with a pendant was not a common combination. Back then, the shop assistant hadn't even minded my decision. But I had always had my own sense of style when it came to accessories. My brother often teased me about my unusual taste. And right now, the chain on Juliet's necklace was also a snake bone chain. I walked up to her desk and tapped on the surface with my knuckles. "Give it back." Juliet looked up at me. "Give back what?" I pointed at her neck. "You're still wearing my necklace, what do you think I mean?" Juliet frowned. "This is ridiculous. This is my necklace." A surge of anger rose in my chest and I said coldly, "If you give it back now, I can pretend this never happened." Juliet's eyes suddenly reddened. I said, "This is my necklace. I have never touched your things." "What happened?" A clear voice came from the doorway. I looked up and saw Bruno walking into the classroom. He had just finished playing basketball, still holding a ball in his hands. I glanced at Juliet and said, "Juliet took my necklace." The moment he heard my words, Bruno immediately responded, "Juliet isn't that kind of person." With red eyes, Juliet looked at me. "Is it because I'm a poor student that you think I deserve to be treated like a thief?" Bruno instantly wrapped his arm around Juliet's shoulder to comfort her. His gaze toward me was filled with coldness. "Elise, you've gone too far." My eyes turned cold. "Fine, then I'll check the surveillance cameras." Juliet showed no fear. "Go ahead." When I went downstairs to the monitoring room to request the footage, I was told that the camera in our classroom had conveniently broken down. Back in the classroom, Bruno glanced at me and asked, "What about the footage?" My eyes fell on Juliet and I let out a short laugh. "The camera just happened to be broken." "What a coincidence." "Don't you think so, Juliet?" Juliet turned her head angrily, fists clenched tightly. Bruno immediately stepped in front of her. "What do you mean by that?" I kept my gaze on Juliet. "Even if the camera's broken, it doesn't matter. This necklace is worth more than 1,000 yuan, which already meets the standard for filing a police report." As I spoke, I pulled out my phone from my bag and unlocked it. "Let's call the police." Bruno shouted angrily. "Elise, that's enough. That necklace was a gift from me to Juliet." My finger paused above the dial key and I raised my eyes to look at him. "The exact same necklace as mine?" Bruno explained. "A while ago, it was Juliet's birthday. I didn't know what to get her, and since I thought the necklace you often wore looked nice, I bought her one too." I stared at him. "If you really bought it, you should know that the original chain of that necklace wasn't like this." "I replaced it myself," Bruno said. "Juliet preferred this chain, so I helped her switch it." I frowned. Something didn't feel right. Too many coincidences. From the start until now, the coincidences had piled up unnaturally. Bruno added, "Maybe you didn't actually lose your necklace, you might have just overlooked it while searching." That uneasy feeling in my chest grew stronger. After a pause, I put my phone down and looked at him. "All right then, I'll check again." I went back to my seat and reached inside my desk compartment. My fingers brushed against something and I froze. I pulled it out slowly. Under the light, the snake bone chain reflected a gleam. It was the necklace I had lost. Chapter 2. When Bruno saw the necklace in my hand, his eyes instantly filled with disgust. "Elise, you're disgusting." All around me, murmurs and insults erupted. So after all that checking the cameras, threatening to call the police, it turns out Elise just couldn't find her own necklace. From now on, let's all stay away from Elise. Otherwise, who knows, we might be accused of being thieves too. Poor Juliet. She didn't even do anything yet she had to endure this. Elise is such a bitch. Elise is just a bully, a fucking idiot. I gripped the necklace, dazed for a moment. But quickly, I snapped out of it. I trusted my memory. At the start, when I searched through my desk compartment, the necklace absolutely wasn't there. Now, there was only one possibility. All of this was part of Juliet's setup. She first took away my necklace and then wore another identical one. That way, my attention would naturally fall on her. Then, once things escalated, she secretly returned the necklace while I was distracted. And in this way, I became the villain, accusing a poor student without reason. Now, Juliet was crying uncontrollably. Choking through her sobs, she shouted. Just because I'm poor, does that mean I deserve to be treated like a thief? If you have money, does that give you the right to bully others? If you have money, does that mean you can trample on other people's dignity at will? Bruno patted her shoulder, comforting her softly while our classmates gathered around Juliet to console her. Amidst the noisy crowd, I put the necklace back around my neck. My gaze pierced through the people and landed on Juliet. You're pretty clever, Juliet. Juliet looked back at me. A trace of malice flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a look of grievance as she turned away. Bruno immediately stepped forward, shielding her. Elise, you've really changed. I looked back at him quietly. Who is it that's changed, Bruno? Chapter 3. My family and Bruno's mother's family had been close friends for generations. Bruno and I were childhood sweethearts, and our families even arranged a marriage engagement for us when we were little. Bruno would, at a single word from me, run across 3 streets in the rain just to buy me a piece of cake. He would also sit by my bedside through the night when I had a fever, taking care of me. Back in middle school, there was once a time when I was falsely accused by other classmates. Bruno didn't hesitate, he immediately chose to believe me. He smiled and told me, Elise, I'll always stand by your side. Back then, our relationship was truly wonderful. Until high school, when Bruno met that poor student Juliet. He stopped always coming to find me and instead went to chat with Juliet. He no longer waited for me before and after school but accompanied Juliet home. He was always by Juliet's side, his eyes no longer lingering on me. Later, Juliet was harassed by some gangsters outside of school. For her, Bruno fought them. When I received the message and rushed to the alley, what I saw was that scene. Bruno stood protectively in front of the girl, his eyes fierce as he knocked down a blonde punk with a single punch. Someone suddenly lunged at Juliet, making her stumble back in fear. Bruno immediately turned and kicked the guy hard in the stomach. He casually wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. If you dare touch her, try it. I froze where I stood, watching that moment. Then, I saw someone raising a stick ready to strike Bruno from behind. My heartbeat spiked. Watch out! I shouted while rushing forward, kicking the attacker down. Not long after, the ambulance and police I had called arrived. Bruno was carried onto the ambulance, his body covered with wounds large and small. Juliet cried as she looked at him, tears falling nonstop. Bruno held her hand gently, comforting her softly. I sat across from them, my palm clenched slightly. During the fight just now, my hand had been cut by a sharp object. Blood dripped steadily from my palm. Drop by drop, falling to the ground. Bruno never looked at me, his gaze fixed on Juliet, full of tenderness. From beginning to end, he never gave me a single glance. Chapter 4. Later, Bruno even began skipping classes frequently for Juliet. One afternoon during an exam, I handed in my paper early and left the school. Then, on an old street, I caught Bruno and Juliet. The sun was setting, the orange glow of dusk spreading across the sky. Bruno and Juliet walked side by side, sharing a box of ice cream. I stepped forward to block their path, fixing my eyes on Bruno. You've been skipping classes far too often. Bruno's eyes showed a trace of irritation at being stopped. What's the point of listening to those boring classes anyway? A surge of anger flared in me. Today was the monthly exam. Do you even realize skipping it will get you a disciplinary record? Bruno frowned. Elise, you're so annoying. I froze at his words. Seeing my expression, Bruno realized how harsh he sounded and quickly said, Sorry, But Juliet stepped forward, shielding Bruno. Bruno has always lived under so much pressure. This is one of the few times he can relax. I looked at her coldly. Relax by gambling away his future? Juliet's eyes immediately reddened. The guilt in Bruno's gaze vanished in an instant, replaced by coldness as he said, Don't talk about Juliet like that. The street lights cast a shadow on the ground, drawing a line right between Bruno and me. I looked at him. And in that moment, I realized. The boy who once ran 3 streets in the rain just to buy me a piece of cake was completely gone. Some people just rot all of a sudden. The memory faded. Noisy voices filled my ears. In front of me, Juliet cried in Bruno's arms. I picked up the phone from my desk and walked out of the classroom. At the turn of the staircase, I dialed a number. When the call connected, I spoke. Brother, someone said I'm a bully. On the other end, my brother's voice came immediately. Who said that? I'll come to the school right now. I curved my lips into a faint smile. Listen to me first. What I mean is, since I'm already being blamed for this, wouldn't it be a waste if I didn't actually use a little of that so-called power? Chapter 5. The next day, when I arrived at school, I saw it. My desk was covered in insults written with chalk and dirty water dripped down the edge. All the books from my desk compartment had been dumped onto the floor. Pages were torn apart and test papers were crumpled into balls and scattered around. Even my chair was covered in shoe prints and stains. I walked to my seat. My deskmate was in the middle of moving her desk away. She gave me a look of disgust. There's no way I'd sit with a spoiled princess like you. Who knows when I'll be accused of being a thief too. I kept my expression calm and nodded slightly. Stepping aside to give her space, I raised my hand, palm up, and said politely, Please, go ahead. I patiently waited for my deskmate to finish moving her desk, then I walked up to the podium and spoke. Who did this? Step forward yourself. But everyone kept on with their own business. The only response I got was silence. I said, No one? Then I'll just check the surveillance footage. At that, whispers broke out among the crowd. Most of them were saying, Didn't the cameras break? Hearing those words, I raised my eyebrows slightly. Surveillance is extremely important. So yesterday, I had someone install the newest model in our classroom. Not only is the image crystal clear, but it also records sound in real time. Chapter 6. This time, the surveillance footage was successfully pulled up. And I saw it. In this incident, more than half of the class had participated. Someone poured dirty water from a mop bucket all over my desk. Someone used chalk to scrawl curses across the surface. Someone emptied out my desk compartment and a crowd of people ripped apart my books and test papers. One person stepped onto my chair and said, Oops, I accidentally stepped in dog shit today. Guess I'll just use her chair to wipe it off. Laughter broke out all around. While all of this was happening, Bruno leaned against a desk, glanced at his watch, and said lazily, Hurry it up. She'll be here in 10 minutes. Seeing this, I lowered my gaze. I thought I had already reached the point where Bruno no longer stirred any waves in my heart, but he turned out to be even more vile than I imagined. My eyes cut through the crowd and locked onto Bruno. Bruno, back then when you fought, I took a knife to my hand to save you. And now, this is how you treat me. I stared at him, my voice dropping cold. You're nothing but a beast. Bruno turned his head, avoiding my eyes. For once, he didn't talk back. Juliet immediately stepped forward. How dare you say that about him? You were the one who made the mistake first. Stop always pushing the blame onto others. My gaze shifted to Juliet, landing on her. It was a look without warmth. The moment Juliet met my eyes, she shuddered uncontrollably. I said, Juliet, you know very well what you've done. There's no need to act like you're important in front of me. Don't worry. I won't forget you. Chapter 7. When our homeroom teacher, Ms. Song, heard about what had happened, she was furious. She immediately called all the students involved up to the podium and shouted sternly, "Apologize." What followed was a few half-hearted, reluctant apologies. I shook my head. I don't feel any sincerity. Ms. Song slammed her hand heavily on the podium. Apologize again. I stopped Ms. Song and smiled as if basked in spring sunlight. Teacher, just saying sorry is too easy. How about writing a reflection instead? I pretended to think for a moment before speaking. 3,000 words should do. Ms. Song nodded. All right. You're the victim here, so we'll go by what you say. As expected, I received plenty of hateful glares. When the crowd dispersed, I walked up to a boy first. He was the one I saw on camera stepping on my chair. I pointed to the chair that was stained with dirt from his shoe. You. Sit down on it. He glared at me with resentment. Why should I? I smiled faintly. You dirted my chair. Cleaning it with your clothes isn't too much to ask, is it? Then I turned to Miss Song. Teacher, is that all right? Miss Song nodded. It's fine. The boy ignored me, muttered a curse under his breath, and tried to shove past me. I didn't indulge him. I grabbed his collar and forced him down onto that chair. Then I clapped my hands lightly. Stay seated like that for the whole day. Next, I walked up to a girl and stopped her. She was my deskmate, Anna, another poor student in our class. Blocked by me, Anna looked up impatiently. What do you want? I shook the torn, shredded remains of a book in my hand. Your luck's pretty bad. This book, you were the one who tore it, right? It's out of print now. I paid $200,000 for it. But since I've already read it, I won't be too unreasonable. I'll give you a 50% discount. 100,000, how about that? Anna froze, then started trembling uncontrollably. I don't have money. Feigning difficulty, I looked over at Ms. Song. Teacher, this. Ms. Song gave Anna a cold look. I'll be contacting your parents. Chapter 8. As I walked near the office, I suddenly heard the sharp sound of a slap from inside. Smack. It was followed by a woman's angry scolding. You just can't stop causing trouble, can you? I pressed down on the doorknob and entered the office. Ms. Song saw me and pointed in my direction. She's the one whose book your daughter tore up. The woman immediately turned to look at me. Her face was weary, her clothes plain. She hurried over to me, bowing repeatedly. Miss, I'm so sorry. It's all that wretch's fault. As she spoke, she yanked Anna over. You can take it out on her however you like. I lowered my gaze. Auntie, the purchase records of this book still exist. Destroying high-value property, if it reaches a certain amount, it qualifies for a case to be filed. In the surveillance footage, your daughter's actions are perfectly clear. In other words, if I called the police, they'd have grounds to open a case immediately. The woman furrowed her brows tightly, her eyes reddening. I know. But her father's still in the hospital and I've been the only one holding the family together. I just can't come up with that much money right now. As she spoke, she suddenly bent her knees and knelt before me. I was startled and rushed to help her up. Please, stand up. But she didn't listen. She knocked her head against the floor, apologizing nonstop. I'm sorry, it's all our fault. I let out a sigh. The woman's coat was patched in many places, her pants washed to the point of fading, her hands rough and calloused. My family had a charitable foundation to aid the poor and I went every year to distribute supplies in impoverished areas. I had seen countless families like hers. Some were even worse off. But I had never once looked down on them. On the contrary, our family had always done our best to help. Even the scholarships given out to poor students in our school were sponsored by my family. I never told anyone, afraid it would hurt their dignity. Now, the woman kept bowing and apologizing. I looked at Anna. Her face was covered in tears and snot, trembling with fear. I said, when you were doing those things, did you ever think of this moment? Do you regret it now? Anna's tears kept falling uncontrollably. Seeing the fear had taken hold, I spoke. Write an IOU. The kneeling woman looked as if she had been pardoned, nodding rapidly. Yes, I'll write it, I'll write it. Wait. I tilted my chin at Anna. You write it. Anna took the pen and paper, sobbing as she wrote. I dictated and she wrote word by word. At the end, I said. Promise to repay the full amount by October 18, 2024. 100-year deadline written on an IOU, what it implied went without saying. Anna looked up at me in disbelief. The woman realized it too, quickly pulling Anna closer. Hurry up and thank her. Anna stared at me blankly. After a long pause, she finally said. I'm sorry. And I could tell that apology was sincere. Looking at me, she sobbed uncontrollably. I think I was deceived by all those rumors. You're actually really kind. I first helped the woman up from the ground. Please, stand up. I really can't accept you kneeling like that. I had never actually intended to make Anna pay the money. But a lesson had to be given. After all, if you forgive lightly, people think you're easy to bully. But if you forgive after intimidation, people will be grateful. After school, as I left the gates, I saw Bruno and Juliet. The moment Juliet spotted me, she came forward. If you're angry with me, then take it out on me. Don't vent on innocent classmates. I blinked in confusion, pointing at myself. Huh? Vent? Me? Before I could even say anything, Anna rushed forward, blocking me and glared at Juliet. What the hell are you barking about? Juliet stared at Anna in disbelief. How can you still be speaking for her? She demanded 100,000 from you. Anna frowned. She never made me pay. Elise isn't at all the person you say she is. Juliet's eyes suddenly filled with tears, as if she was about to cry again. Bruno instantly shielded her and glared at me coldly. Elise, apologized to Juliet. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Apologize my ass. Bruno was furious. He pointed at me and said coldly. You just wait. Chapter 9. I hadn't expected Bruno's just you wait to arrive so quickly. That weekend was the family banquet at Bruno's house. Bruno's mother was chatting warmly with me when Bruno walked in, bringing Juliet with him. Juliet wore a haute couture dress, her hair styled up, a diamond necklace around her neck and shoes encrusted with rhinestones, dolled up like a porcelain doll. The moment Bruno's mother saw this, her face changed instantly. What is the meaning of this? Bruno cast a glance at me and said. I want to cancel the engagement with Elise. Bruno's mother slammed the table. Nonsense. But Bruno went on. Elise has a problem with her character. She falsely accused Juliet of stealing her things. I will never fulfill a marriage engagement with such a disgusting person. Hearing him slander me like that, my brother was so furious he nearly swung a punch at Bruno. I quickly grabbed his hand to stop him. Don't lose your temper. The next second, a sharp, resounding slap echoed through the room. Smack. Bruno's mother had raised her hand and struck him across the face. You've known Elise for over 10 years. Don't you know what kind of person she is? And now you dare side with an outsider to hurt her? My mother's face also turned cold at Bruno's words. Since Bruno thinks so little of our Elise, then let's end this engagement. Bruno's mother rubbed her temples wearily. Fine, this is that bastard's fault. Then she turned to Bruno, pointing at Juliet beside him. And you think that breaking off the engagement means you can be with her? Dream on. Bruno immediately stepped in front of Juliet. Mom, don't be prejudiced against Juliet. But his mother, furious, cut him off sharply. You fought for her, skipped class for her, haven't you done enough reckless things already? It was Elise who kept you in line before and now look at you, helping an outsider hurt her instead. Seems to me you don't even see me as your mother anymore. Her breath grew unsteady as she spoke. I quickly stepped forward to steady her. She slammed the table once more, glaring at Bruno. I refuse to believe I can't discipline you. I'll have you transferred to another school immediately. Your uncle is in City A. If I send you there, at least someone can keep an eye on you. As for being with her, forget it. Bruno's face went pale with fear. He stammered. No, please don't. Juliet immediately stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks, her appearance pitiful and delicate. You think my existence ruins him. You think my presence harms him. Fine. Then I'll transfer schools. I'll leave. Bruno turned toward her, his eyes reddening. Juliet. I couldn't help but look sideways. Juliet's tactic of retreating to advance was indeed clever. If she really did leave for Bruno's sake, she'd probably become his eternal white moonlight, his untouchable ideal. Bruno's mother trembled with rage at the scene. Seeing that the drama had reached its peak, I raised my hands and began to applaud. Chapter 10. The sound of applause was strikingly out of place in the current atmosphere. Everyone's attention shifted to me. I looked at Juliet. You want to transfer schools? No problem. But before you leave, aren't you forgetting something? Juliet asked. What? I replied. Of course, you need to admit everything you've done, and then, I lifted my eyelids slightly to look at her. Apologize to me. Juliet stood there motionless. I didn't do anything. I gave a small laugh. That day, the media club happened to be filming in the hallway outside our classroom. A while ago, while sorting through their material, they discovered that you had accidentally appeared in the shot. They sent me that footage. Do you want to guess what I saw? Juliet swallowed nervously, a sign of tension. I fixed my gaze on her. Everything you did was captured. Juliet immediately blurted. You're lying. I went on. You were clever, I'll give you that. First, you took away my necklace and put on one exactly like it. That way, my eyes would naturally focus on you. Then, while I wasn't paying attention, you returned the necklace. And in this way, you successfully turned me into the villain who slanders poor students without cause. But too bad. I set my phone down on the table and pulled up the video. Looking at her, I curved my lips. Seems luck isn't on your side. The video clearly showed Juliet taking a necklace out of my desk compartment. Her eyes widened and she began trembling uncontrollably. Bruno turned his head toward her in disbelief. Juliet, you... I looked at Juliet coldly. Of course, coincidences like this don't really exist. The video was fabricated. The president of the media club was a close friend of mine and a skilled video editor. After that incident, I had asked her to create a composite video for me. I'd just received it today, still hot off the press. It wasn't flawless, but it was more than enough to blow up in Juliet's face. Now, all the color had completely drained from Juliet's cheeks. Chapter 11. Bruno looked at Juliet. Bit by bit, the filter through which he saw her shattered, his faith collapsing. His voice was filled with anguish. How could you do something like this? Juliet instantly prepared to cry. She reached out to grab Bruno's sleeve. But Bruno yanked his arm away and asked coldly. Why did you do this? Now that the truth had been laid bare, Juliet seemed to give up all pretense. She shed her weak facade and glared at me with venom. Elise, why is it that from the moment you were born you had everything? I can't stand that arrogant look of yours. I just wanted to drag someone like you down from your pedestal into the mud. I wanted you to taste what it feels like to be spat on by everyone. I pressed the stop button on my recorder and said. Quite a speech. Don't worry, I'll be sharing those words of yours in the school group chat. I waved my phone lightly. And one more thing, I've already discussed it with the homeroom teacher. Next Monday, at the flag-raising ceremony, you'll clear everything up in front of the whole school and apologize to me. Bruno's mother was livid at Juliet's words. She raised her hand and immediately 2 attendants stepped forward to escort Juliet out of the banquet. Just as they were about to drag her away, I stopped them and gave Juliet a glance. The clothes and jewelry you're wearing, return them. Juliet's face flushed red with rage. These were gifts from Bruno. I turned to look at Bruno. With his back to us, he said coldly. I never gave such things to someone like you. I faced Juliet again. You can return the clothes later after you take them off at home. But the jewelry, take it off now. At my signal, the attendant stepped forward and stripped the accessories from her. Without her hair ornaments, Juliet's hair fell messily around her shoulders. She glared at me with spite. My gaze fell on her face. Your makeup looks elaborate, done by a professional, wasn't it? The next second, my expression turned cold. Wipe it off. An attendant immediately brought over a basin of water and began scrubbing her face with a cloth. Once her makeup was gone, Juliet's face burned with humiliation as she prepared to leave in shame. But I stopped her again. She trembled slightly. My eyes shifted downward. Wait. Those shoes. It's not that hard to walk barefoot. Take them off. The attendants removed her shoes. Now, Juliet stood there with messy hair, smeared makeup on her face, barefoot and utterly disheveled. I nodded in satisfaction and stepped closer to her. Do you see clearly now? This is what it means to bully someone with power. Hadn't she been crying all along about how I was a bully? Well, if I didn't actually bully her just once, wouldn't that be letting her down? Chapter 12. After Juliet left, Bruno walked up to me. I'm sorry. I frowned slightly. Louder. Bruno immediately repeated, louder this time. I'm sorry. I nodded. I heard you. But I don't forgive you. Bruno froze in place. I turned and looked at him. I kept wondering how Juliet managed to return the necklace. I only left the classroom once, to request the surveillance footage. My gaze grew cold as it locked onto him. You brought her to my desk, didn't you? The color instantly drained from Bruno's face. That day, after I had left the classroom, Juliet's eyes were red with tears and Bruno patted her shoulder comfortingly. Don't be sad. Elise must have just forgotten where she put it. As he spoke, he pulled Juliet up to her feet. Come on. He pressed Juliet down into my seat. Take a look for yourself. Maybe you'll find her necklace. Taking advantage of his distraction and cover, Juliet swiftly slipped the necklace from her hand back into my desk. Then she stood up, feigning indifference. I wouldn't snoop through her things. Bruno paused for a moment, then quickly followed after her, saying, Juliet, you're just too kind-hearted. Watching Bruno's shifting expression now, I let out a cold laugh. It was Anna who had told me that Bruno had once brought Juliet to my desk. Ever since I'd helped her before, she had firmly believed I was a good person. So when she remembered that detail and found it suspicious, she immediately told me. By the time I learned of it, my heart was already calm. It's only when you expect something that you end up disappointed. And as for Bruno, now, the only feeling I had left was pure disgust. Chapter 13. Bruno turned away in dejection and left. Suddenly, I fell into someone's arms. My mother held me, patting my back gently, her voice full of heartache. Our Elise has suffered. Something stirred deep in my heart. Even though I always acted strong, it didn't mean that going through all this left me unscathed inside. My brother looked at me too, his eyes glinting with worry. No wonder you suddenly called me before asking to have the latest surveillance cameras installed in your classroom. Elise, they bullied you, didn't they? I suppressed the sting at the corner of my eyes. Looking up at my mom and brother, I gave them a bright smile. Don't worry. I won't ever let myself be wronged. My brother pulled out his phone. No. This can't just end like this. As he typed, he continued. I'll inform the school to revoke her scholarship. Since she despises our family so much, it's not right for her to keep taking the financial aid that we sponsor. At Monday's flag-raising ceremony, Juliet was forced to clear everything up and apologize to me in front of the entire school. At the same time, her outrageous words were posted by me in the school group chat. Now, Juliet had become a rat that everyone wanted to beat, reviled wherever she went. No matter where she walked, people pointed fingers at her. Chapter 14. Lately, Bruno had suddenly begun clinging to me. During PE class, a basketball flew toward me. Bruno immediately ran over and intercepted it mid-air, drawing gasps of surprise from everyone around. Holding the ball, Bruno wanted to say something to me. But before he could open his mouth, I turned and walked away. On a rainy day, I was standing under the eaves of the teaching building when Bruno approached with an umbrella. Let me walk you home. I was holding my phone in one hand, making a call and waved him off with the other. No need. But Bruno still held the umbrella and reached out to pull me along. You'll catch a cold in the rain. Let's go. His persistent pestering infuriated me. I shoved him hard. The umbrella fell from his hand, splashing water everywhere. Now he stood exposed in the downpour, raindrops streaming down his hair and face. I looked at him coldly. Bruno, stop being pathetic. At that moment, my call finally connected. I spoke. Uncle Chi. It's fine, I haven't been waiting long. You can pull up now. Moments later, a car stopped at the school gate. Our driver, Uncle Chi, stepped out with an umbrella and escorted me into the car. I shut the door. The engine roared to life, spraying up water as the car drove off. The heavy rain continued late into the night without any sign of stopping. At midnight, with a strange premonition, I pulled open the curtains. There was Bruno, standing outside my house. He had no umbrella, letting the rain stream freely down his face. I immediately yanked the curtains shut. Disgusting. The next morning, yawning as I stepped out of my house, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Someone was standing right at my door. Damn, you scared me. Bruno looked haggard, dark circles heavy under his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. I acted that way before because you were too controlling, too overbearing. Just like my mom. I gave a careless nod. Sorry, but I'm not going to change. Bruno looked at me with heavy emotion. But the truth is, what I felt for Juliet was just misplaced protectiveness. The only one in my heart is you. Huh. It was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh. I raised an eyebrow slightly. You've got real talent for comedy. Ever considered becoming a stand-up comic? After all, you're already a giant joke yourself. Ignoring the mockery in my tone, Bruno still stared stubbornly at me. Elise, can't you give me another chance? My gaze turned icy in an instant. Bruno, I don't make a habit of collecting trash. Chapter 15. Recently, Anna transferred to another school. Her mother took her to a different city for medical treatment. On the day Anna left, I found that out-of-print book in my desk compartment. The torn pages had been carefully glued back together. Inside the book, there was also a note of gratitude and a brand new IOU. That new IOU changed the debt to $200,000, with a deadline set 10 years later. Holding that new IOU, I was momentarily speechless. Juliet also transferred schools. Unable to withstand the rumors, she decided to leave. She transferred to City A. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. When the call connected, I spoke. Uncle. On the other end was Bruno's uncle David, 6 years older than us. After graduating from university, he hadn't stayed in Swayan City to take over the family business. Instead, he went to City A to build his career, and now his company was thriving. A deep, steady voice came through the receiver. It's rare for you to call me. What happened? I smiled faintly. I'd like to ask you to keep an eye on someone for me. Juliet thought that moving to City A would give her a fresh start. How naive. I never forget a grudge. David, once he heard about what had happened, acted quickly. Soon, Juliet's past misdeeds spread throughout her new school. There too, she ended up isolated and shunned. Later, it was said that she couldn't endure the constant gossip and pointing fingers. She developed mental illness and began acting erratically. Eventually, she was sent to a psychiatric hospital. As for Bruno, back when he fought for Juliet, he made countless enemies. One day after school, a gang cornered him and beat him so badly they broke his leg. For the rest of his life, he could only live in a wheelchair. By the time I heard all this, I had already received my admission letter from my dream university. On the day I boarded the plane, the sun was shining brightly. Just like my future, radiant and full of light.